Everyone. This is FounderTechTok, a space where we decode founder journeys and learn about the art and science of building the future. Our guest today, Ayushi Sinha, works at the intersection of tech and healthcare and also venture capital, I believe, right?
Yep.
And as the founder and CEO of Turmeric, she's solving critical industry problems, ensuring that AI models are trained on diverse and inclusive data. From Princeton to Harvard Business School, join me as I explore her entrepreneurial journey. Hi, Ayushi. Welcome to Founder Tech Talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. I love the name turmeric. Why did you choose such a name?
Well, turmeric gets its origins from haldi, which is a South Asian spice, really signifying health and well-being. And so I wanted to really pick a name that not just signified health and well-being, but really, paid ode to my own roots. So that's kind of where the name came from.
And like a follow-up question that I always ask all of my founder guests is, how did your roots really shape you? Like, what was the biggest influence? I think the better question to ask would be, what was the biggest influence for your entrepreneurial journey? Like, what shaped your risk and creation appetite?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I hope my answer is a little maybe non-obvious. So my parents were definitely my biggest sort of inspiration, and that how they raised me really has informed my obsession with scaling access to healthcare, but also risk, ironically. So my parents actually immigrated from India to work in rural Tennessee and federally qualified healthcare centers. And so on one hand, I grew up with like conversations at the dinner table being around questions of how do you actually bring real access to rural communities when it comes to healthcare? And so I realized at an early age that technology was kind of the how, right? Without technology, it's really tough to make sure like everyone has universal healthcare coverage and access. On the flip side, though, when it comes to risk, a lot of people are very surprised. They asked me, didn't your parents like force you to go to med school? And actually, it was a total opposite. Obviously, my parents love what they do, but something we talk about all the time growing up is they love healthcare, but like for example, my dad really wanted to go be a physics professor. And at that time and place in India, physics professors didn't really make that much money. So he chose to be a doctor as a golden ticket financially. And so I think I've been very privileged to one, grow up with people who really are servants in their community and bring healthcare to people who really need it. But also, I have the privilege of my parents tell me all the time, they say, we did not sacrifice our professional careers, dreams, and ambitions for you to not really live your dreams. So my parents are 100% get all the credit for kind of where I'm here right now, but really because they kind of showed me this insight and showed me how powerful really healthcare access can be, but also, you know, I feel very privileged to actually get to go chase my dreams, realizing that most people in the world don't actually have that privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite exceptional. And I think that's very rare as well, right? Um,
Super rare. I mean, it's funny. I feel like all my cousins are all doctors. They're so smart, but I do think like there is a trope, right? Like ABCD becomes a doctor. And so I feel like it was actually like I kind of felt like a black sheep in a lot of ways. Growing up in a doctor family and not going to med school, I felt like, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? And then realizing that, no, actually, I do have this passion that, you know, makes me kind of a little different than everybody else, but it's one that I'm very thankful that I've been able to carve this path and been supported throughout.
yeah, I'm sure your parents are also proud of the path that you're taking. Yeah, so which brings me to a more operational question regarding your company, which is what was the real clinical problem in healthcare that made you start Turmeric?
Yeah. Um, I wish it was just one day I woke up and it was like a magical realization or like classic like Isaac Newton style an apple fell on my head. It was neither. It was really through many conversations over a long period of time. So first, again, having just like going to family Thanksgiving and all my cousins, my aunts and uncles, my parents, their friends saying like, we don't like that Epic was built for other people, for insurance companies, for hospitals, for administration, not for doctors. And so one, just like listening to the people around me and what they were complaining about. That didn't like, again, immediately give me the idea for turmeric, but I was like, okay, there's definitely interest from doctors to shape the future of AI. I'm like, great, that's on the supply side. Now on the demand side, right? I actually worked at Nines, a computer vision company before going to business school. And that's where I had firsthand experience working with machine learning researchers to understand, wow, acquiring healthcare data is non-trivial. Structuring it is very hard. It's very non-discrete data. There's a lot of clinical interpretation that goes into it. And so through that job, I actually figured out the pain points on the machine learning side. And then it was really kind of taking both of those experiences and then having the time and space at business school to really think through them. Because there are a lot of problems. Not every problem is worth building a business around.
All of this, hype about healthcare AI and so many buzzwords, which one from your vantage point, what's one misconception that actually slows real progress?
I think right now a lot of ML folk and investors, people in the apps there, they think that healthcare data can be treated like other forms of data, but healthcare data is non-discrete. What I mean by that is think about all these AI code gen tools. At the end of the day, they either compile or they don't compile, right? You either throw an error, right? It's very discrete. But in healthcare, actually, two doctors that are trained from the best universities would disagree. That's why we literally have second opinions. And so I think what people really just these misconceptions arise from healthcare, both clinical judgment as well as data, is non-discrete, it's non-deterministic. And if real humans disagree on what kind of cancer someone has or the staging or what treatment, like how can we design AI to be deterministic and to be like correct all the time? I think it's just a completely different ballgame. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be building healthcare AI, but I think we should have proper, biases detection in place, explainability, transparency. It's just way more complicated technically.
Interesting. I had like so many follow-up questions to that, but I think I'm gonna finish all of my questions and then yeah, so okay, my next question is medical data is sensitive and labeling it is even more sensitive. So who do you think should own the process of labeling? Physicians or the AI teams or the institute, and why?
So when you say own, that's a unique choice of word because in some ways someone like us turmeric right is like the best fit because we see labeling across many different customers, so we actually know what best practices are. So when it comes from a process point of view, I think we should own it. Obviously I'm biased, that's what our company does, but I think structurally it's important that someone like turmeric sees across the board what is best practices and helps the whole industry be better. Now when it comes to IP and ownership, that's quite tricky, right? Because if you think about it, a lot of data right now, patients own their data, right? But when you think about labor laws, right? If there's an act of labor done, then typically we put, some sort of ownership, such as, let's go back to basics. An apple in the wild is no one's property, but if a farmer plucks an apple off the tree, then we, from labor laws, would consider the apple to be the property of the farmer. And so similarly, when it comes to actually labeling, again, underlying raw data I think always belongs to the actual patient. But then hospitals oftentimes make the case that any tests that are done should be the property or at least licensing right of the hospital because look, we put an effort and labor to actually take this urine sample. Again, that's I think so nascent. I don't think there's necessarily a hard and fast rule, but that's like a tension, right? Like because also put in labor, do they own the lab results or does the patient still own the lab results or do they just own the underlying samples? That's like part one. Part two, in terms of the actual labeling, what we think is important is we think it's important for the structured data to be with the companies who we work with, the raw data to be that of our patients, but the actual labels we technically own and we basically license out. We think that's important because that's the only way that we can improve our own processes. If the actual labels are the property of someone else, then we actually don't have the rights to actually learn from it. So maybe that's getting a little too technical, deep in the weeds, but we've been incredibly thoughtful around every step of this process.
As a founder, you look at metrics every day, and what KPI tells you that turmeric is truly improving healthcare and not just like shipping models.
So we don't ship models. We help our customers ship models.
Okay.
Yeah, shipping models is one metric that matters to our customers, so therefore it matters to us. Obviously, revenue matters as well, right? But also, you can think about like there's some really interesting questions around quality of data. Is that increasing? Are processes increasing and doing better, right? Because we're in the business of very high touch, high data quality. Of course, revenue matters, unit economic matters, but really quality is the number one metric.
So quality of data, what do you mean by quality of data? Like accuracy of how accurate they are?
Yeah, so data is not accurate. When you talk about accuracy, that's actually the model, right? And so how you test model accuracy, you do through evaluations. So that's like a whole separate thing. 100% we care about that. When I talk about data quality, you can think of completeness, you can think about how telling is it, right? Like for one of
Less.
our projects, we only had textual data that corresponded to imaging. We didn't have the whole record, we didn't have the imaging, we just had the textual data, right? So technically from a quality perspective, you can think of completeness like that. You can also think of like, okay, is it actually representative of the question you're trying to solve? If you're trying to figure out if someone has lung cancer, you know, not all pieces of data are going to show that. So it's pretty complicated, but that's sort of how we think it through.
Okay. And are doctors skeptical of tech? Like the tech that they're using? Are they skeptical or are they all for it? Like, what's the hardest barrier that you
Yeah,
had to cover?
for sure. I think doctors are very skeptical of technology, but we started with our early adopters, people who did research already, people who were excited about AI. We got a whole fellowship, right? So I think it's important to start where you have a lot of good support.
Wait, you have a fellowship program?
So that's what on this doctor side, right? We have like a huge fellowship program where we actually educate doctors about AI because we want to make sure they're part of our community.
That's really nice. I didn't know that
Yeah.
existed, I think. Um, you speak a lot about scaling, not the philosophy, but the what does safe scaling actually look like when AI to real clinical environments?
So first, safe scaling thing is related to you have a human in the loop, right? I think we're very nascent in AI. We need to have humans in the loop. That might change over time, but right now, is there a human in the loop? Two, actually, what does the insurance look like? So if something happens, who gets sued? Is it the doctor? Is it the AI company? Right? Like having having very proper legal boundaries in place is very important. And then also making sure that we have correct like boundaries, right? Like I should be able to do things they should not. When you think of finance, right? You should not be able to necessarily write to certain APIs to withdraw or send money yet. Agents should have a lot of hoops that they should go through, and similarly with AI as well when it comes to healthcare.
That was my last question, but I have so many follow-up questions based on what you said, actually. I think we need to schedule one more.
Sounds good. Okay, well, it was so nice to chat and
Yes.
excited to see the results of this. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye. See you.